Thank you. Commissioner Eggenberger, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cruz,
No, he had given prior notice.
Commissioner Eggenberger, here. Commissioner Foster,
She'd also given prior notice.
Commissioner Janowski,
Also prior notice.
Commissioner Lee,
Present.
Commissioner Singh,
I haven't heard from him whether he'll be here or not.
Watkins,
Here.
Commissioner Weber,
Here.
and Chairperson Zimmer.
I am here. Thank you. And we also have Patrick Sloan and Zach Michelle here from the Township Planning Office, and we have 2 members of the public here in our audience. Just want to acknowledge that. Awesome. And do we have a motion to approve our minutes of March 24th?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Lee. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, and do we have anything to add to our agenda? Or
No
delete?
changes.
No changes to the agenda, awesome. Do we want to accept the agenda?
I move to, I move to accept the agenda as written.
All right, and second, we have, again, hey there. What's that? Oh, you're muffled, yeah. And plus, you're in a different place, so I have to look. Who is that?
Commissioner Singh.
Yeah, yeah, Commissioner Singh just arrived. Nice to see you. And we just got started. So we have a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Lee. Any further discussion on the agenda? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do you have, we're just short tonight. Nope, that's okay. No, I was going to say maybe we could slide down.
Oh, yeah, this one's just.
Oh,
tiny.
okay. Why don't we trade? Well, yeah, so then Doug doesn't have to lean over to talk. Uh-huh. It looked awkward. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Sorry about the loud noise. All right. Do we have any communications we should talk about, Patrick?
No additional communications.
Okay, thank you. And we have a section for public comment. If you are here to speak about anything besides Harvest Arbor, please make your way to the podium now. No? Okay. We have no public comment. And we have no public hearing tonight and no old business. We have some new business, however, which I will introduce. We have item number 070-SFP-8534, that is Harvest Arbor. We are considering final condominium site plan approval for parcel number 070-99-0002-702. This parcel is located on the southeast corner of Ford and Napier Roads. This is proposed new construction of 51 detached single-family residences. Patrick, tell us all about it.
Sure, thank you. This is a final site plan that's proposed for Harvest Arbor at the southeast corner of Ford and Napier. And previously, the Planning Commission reviewed the final PDD and the preliminary site plan on May 6th of last year. So it's been a little under a year since the Planning Commission last reviewed this plan. And after the Planning Commission recommended approval of the final PDD and the preliminary site plan, the plan went to the Board of Trustees, which approved the preliminary site plan and final PDD at its meeting on June 11th of last year. So since that time, since last June, with the preliminary site plan approval in hand, the applicant has gone forward with all required state, county, and engineering permits. And in our condominium ordinance, it's a requirement that the applicant obtain all of those permits before the applicant can come before the Planning Commission and the board for approval of the final site plan. So essentially, the final site plan for a condominium is verifying that it's the same as the preliminary site plan, which in this case the plan is, and the extra step of verifying that all required state and county permits have been obtained, as well as the township engineering permit. So those permits have been obtained. They're included in the packet. And the next step with the township engineering permitting is to submit the required performance guarantees if they haven't already yet been submitted. So that's a little bit of a formality just in terms of submitting that. And our engineering division won't hold the pre-application or the pre-construction conference until those bonds or performance guarantees are received. The same with any required landscaping for required trees and shrubs and pond plantings. So I've gone over the plan in detail at previous meetings, and the plan hasn't changed that much. So the letter that we write is more or less the same as it was last year when the preliminary site plan was before the Planning Commission, with a few minor updates just on any loose ends that may have been tied up since then, as well as verifying the state and county permits that have been obtained. So with that, our recommendation is approval of the final site plan on the subject parcel as provided in the plan documents, as the plan meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance and the condominium ordinance, except where it was otherwise modified based on the previous PDD agreement. And also subject to all applicable state, county, and township requirements, which have been verified through those permit processes. So that concludes our staff report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, Mr. Knowles, do you have
Good
anything to
evening.
add?
Not really. Mike Knowles with the Umlar Group, representing MI Homes. With me is David Straub. We're excited to get started. It's been a long road. They all are. And this promises to be a neat little development. 51 units, 26 acres. We have 2 MDOT permits. We have 2 county permits. We have 3 state permits and a couple of Canton Township permits as well. So we're ready to get going. Excited. Thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. Anybody have anything you want further information or any comments on the board? I'll just open it up.
No, we put these people through enough.
Okay. Anybody who want to make a motion?
I'll motion, Madam Chair. I move to recommend approval of the Harvest Arbor final site plan on parcel number 070-99-0002-702 as provided in the plan documents, as the site plan meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance and condominium ordinance, except where modified by the previously approved PDD agreement, subject to all applicable state, county, and township requirements.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Watkins and support by Commissioner Singh. Any further discussion? All right, Commissioner Eggenberger, could you call the vote?
Sure. Commissioner Eggenberger, yes. Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh. Yes. Commissioner Watkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
and Chairperson Zuber.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Best of
A
luck.
special thanks to the commissioners under the weather for having us have a quorum here tonight. So thank you.
Exactly.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for observing. I appreciate it.
Hope you feel better, Commissioner.
Me too.
Yeah. All right, excellent. So, moving right along, we have the annual tree report to discuss. I assume that is under your purview, Zach, so please tell us all about it.
First annual tree report.
Awesome.
Zach, no pressure, but we really love that other guy.
I know, Patrick, we had the over-under 30 minutes.
You mean the other tree guy?
That other tree guy.
The tree guy from U of M, yeah.
Yeah.
No offense.
No.
I think she just did.
Offend him?
So the fun thing, the background of this doesn't require formal action. You guys get into trees with the tree preservation ordinance and site plan review. So we wanted to get this back to you, both so you can maybe pull some more knowledge from it, and also so you can provide us with insight and questions on how to make it better in the future. That's because we could not find any examples of other communities that have done an annual tree program report like this.
Wow.
So we have to do the annual planning commission reports. The only reports I was able to find for trees are like an every 5-year report or every, that type of big thing. So there weren't a lot of examples. We kind of bodged together a bunch of things. I shared it with Lawrence, the tree guy that we liked, and he said, this is fantastic. Can we share this with other people? So other folks will start doing this. So we got to cut new ground with this. So again, any questions or ways to make it better, let us know throughout. Quick introduction is that this talks about the public trees that we manage and that are especially the ones in inventory. Canton owns a lot of woodlands that are undeveloped that we don't manage. They're not inventoried, but that's something in the future we're looking to get into. currently have along the major streets. We call them street trees, Canton Center, Warren, Joy, those streets. We have trees on municipal facilities around this building, and we have trees in the parks. In the planning department, we primarily focus on the street trees and the municipal trees. We also assist with some of the park trees, but they kind of do their own thing. That's where we're at with kind of the trees that we've got. We do have right now the trees that we're responsible for, so that includes all three of those over 6,800 trees. Higher from our 2019 inventory, which is a great thing that we had, but there were a lot of trees on there that we're not responsible for. So all the trees, can you pull up to the map on? There were all the trees along Salts and Hanford are in our inventory, but we don't manage them. So then it's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it is not. Sorry.
He's got
Thank you.
such a projecting voice, I didn't realize.
Yes. I was in marching band, so we had to be loud without
What was your,
microphones there.
wait, what was your instrument?
Alto saxophone.
And you still had to speak loudly?
It's a big stadium, we couldn't hear, so if you could see the whistle, you had to shout.
Oh,
So everyone could hear.
thank you, sorry.
What stadium was that?
Michigan Stadium, it was the largest college stadium during my marching days there.
Good job, Patrick.
Just a little segue there.
Yep. So of our tree inventory, of the public trees that we manage, most of them are the street trees. There are over 4,000 of those. Next highest up is parks. There's almost 2,000 of those. Municipal trees is kind of at the bottom. There's about 500 of those. Since 2019, we've gotten more parks trees. They've been aggressive with grants and planting trees various different ways. The other two categories have dropped, the municipal trees and the street trees. That's primarily because a lot of our focus has gone to removing pear trees. So we have roughly 500 empty spots where we used to have trees. Those were basically all pear trees that we cut down.
Thank you for doing that.
Yep. On to
Those are
page
the
2
trees,
through-
those are the trees that we're seeing getting cut along like Haggerty Road, Sheldon Center, those
Yep.
trees, right?
Yep.
Can I, just a question, why? We had a pear tree, we got rid of it. Why is that a good thing?
There's too many partridges.
Yes. How long
when you
do
leaving
we
for
want to be here?
Paris?
So,
No, I don't want a long one, just.
yep, no,
Is
no,
it
it's
a
an important
problem?
thing, and actually, we put in together an application to the Michigan Association of Planning to talk about our process of ridding ourselves of the pear trees. So, the pear trees they started as a noble enterprise in the end of the 19th century, early 19th century, end of 18th, or sorry, at the end of the 1800s. There was a blight affecting all the pear trees on the west coast of the U.S., and as we did in those days, we sent people out to the world to go find other species that might be able to fix that blight. So they sent a fellow to China, and he found these pear trees were growing everywhere. They're growing on top of the mountains, in the desert, in the swamps, in the good soil and the bad soil. He's like, this is a good tree. They didn't think that maybe it's growing everywhere, maybe it will grow everywhere. And so they brought it back to a test facility on the West Coast, and they planted a bunch of there. The problem was it had a bunch of thorns, but there was one tree that did not have the thorns. And they're like, okay, we're going to get this one, and we're going to clone it and make genetic copies of this. It'll go everywhere, and it'll be good. Will be easy to control it because it doesn't pollinate with itself. The problem is when you do a clone, you have the rootstock, right? And you cut off a branch, and you fuse it onto there. If the rootstock sends up a branch, now that has different genetics than the top of the tree, and it will breed. And so,
Nature finds a way.
what's that?
Nature finds a way.
It does. It won't be contained. And so, pear trees were very popular for planting in urban areas and with landscaping because they will grow everywhere. If bad soil, no water, drought, floods, they'll grow, they're happy. The problem is that they reproduce very quickly, they spread, and they don't have a long life.
And they're weak.
They're weak, it'll get
Yeah, they
a
get
wind,
damaged
it'll
a lot in the
split. And it,
Oh,
storms.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're very, and they smell bad.
I got it. Thank you.
Yep. So, and from the municipal side, we can trim them and do things to try to bodge them up together, but we just lose so much money on these trees because the amount of time we have to put at them versus how long they're there and the benefits they provide isn't very good. So they're kind of like a pest tree, and unfortunately, we planted a bunch of them after we cut down all the ash trees. We're not the only one, but the big headline from tonight is this will be the last spring that we have any of the pears on the streets that we're responsible for or municipal facilities. For those of you here with Lawrence, he was super excited about that and is using us as a good example of what to do with trees, which is kind of good after the lawsuits that we're a good example that's being held up.
Can I make a plea that after you're done getting rid of all the pear trees, can you go through the township and get rid of all the cottonwood trees?
That's a trickier one because they do some good things.
I'm having a hard time finding what those are.
All the cotton.
They make your nose run.
Exactly, and make my yard a mess.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So some highlights for the maintenance we did last year, and which page is this on? Into section 3. We did a heck of a lot of maintenance last year. You can see compared to previous years, and maybe even scroll down the next page where you have a little chart there. We touched 652 public trees last year. Part of that significant increase is because the Parks Leisure Services received a grant to plant 104 trees. We also were able to start trimming trees, which is something that you should do every 7 years, but we haven't done it because all our energy has gone into pear trees. And I'm also very good at zeroing out the budget for tree planting and tree removals. I zeroed both of them out last year. That's something skill I should put on LinkedIn, I guess. It's a very unique skill, but it's fun to have.
No, because we'd like to keep you here.
I thank you. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. So we're really excited about that. You see there, the 420, that's a lot of trees that we planted. That's even more than in the tornado recovery period. Again, partly because of the grants that the Leisure Services did. But even more exciting than that number is of those trees, we planted 41 different species. That's huge, and not just 41 different species, but 31 different genera and 18 different families. So we're getting good about that. Now, it is really challenging for us because we have tough soils. A lot of trees don't like to try to grow in these soils, plus with the development, soils have been compacted. We also have road salt and pollution. Dogwood is a very pretty tree, but it does not seem to like being anywhere near cars. They just kind of get up and fall apart. So what we have been doing when we plant the new species is we're planting a smaller number unless we know they're going to do well. So we can kind of watch them and observe them. A couple of exciting things from last year, some new trees that we planted that weren't in our inventory previously is the American beech tree. Now, there are some health concerns with them, but we planted them because it's an area, we don't have a lot of beech trees out there right now. So we only planted 3 of them. They're over in the park by the trail where it crosses from the library. We have to give them lots of space because they're really big. One of the things really exciting about them is that they are one of the most prominent tree species at the time of settlement in Canton. They do well in our soils. They're a big grand tree. They'll live for a very long time. Another tree that we've mixed in is black maple. Now I say it's controversial there because in the olden days, it used to be considered a separate species from the sugar maple. But now the fancy pants tree folks are saying, it's just a sugar maple. Now, I kind of call it out separately because they do have different characteristics, and the black maple has a different range. It will go into hotter areas and drier areas than sugar maples do. So as we're selecting these trees, we're trying to prepare for that type of eventuality. And although we aren't planting a lot of maples, there are some cases where we may have a row of maples, and if one goes in the middle, we want to try to have a maple there so that it plays well and looks right to your eye instead of having a weird tree in the middle of a bunch of other trees. Cucumber tree magnolia, that's another really funny one. That's also out off Summit by the splash pad area. Yep.
signs next to them?
There are signs out there. Leisure Services ordered them, and we went and stuck them down after planting. Some of them have moved. We also have a map, so if there are any of these trees you guys are like, I want to go see these trees live and in person, let us know. We can pull it out and direct you to them. Now, the cucumber tree magnolia was so rare that it was a smaller fell than we normally get. It's about this big. But it is the biggest magnolia tree. It grows in southern Ontario, so even though it's not native, it's in the area. And it'll grow up and have beautiful flowers on this thing in spring. Katsura, that one is so rare that when I told Lawrence last year that we were planting some in the spring, he asked, where did you get it? I've been trying to find this to put in my yard. So that's kind of exciting to have a tree.
Where did you get it?
We got it from Comboli. The
Oh,
thing
really?
is, we tell them what we want to plant in the end of the year or the very beginning of January, and they go out and harvest them specifically for us.
Oh, cool.
So that's a fun one. There's a bunch of them out on the road on the north side of the park. We've put a couple out in the streets too. That'll be the best spot to see it though. We've got like 5 or 8 of them in a row. When they start to mature, they have beautiful color in both the spring and the fall, so we're adding that fun stuff there. So those are some of the more exciting ones that we added. Let's go down to the tree varieties
The field trip.
We could. That would be fun.
in 4 there.
Yeah, you didn't
The
talk about
sourwood is
sourwood.
fun because it's only in North America. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It's a fun one too because when we in the spots where we have the really tall power lines, it gives us another tree to put in there besides just the crabapple or something else.
Let's see. I looked those up because I'd never heard of them, and I thought they were kind of pretty. They're although I don't know how much of those flowers drop in the summer, but it looked pretty.
All right. So for tree variety, for good or ill, we're calling it variety, not diversity, because that can flag a bunch of things, but it's having a bunch of different trees, right? It's all the same thing. We learned with the ash tree that it's important to have a bunch of different buckets to have these trees in, and we're actually doing pretty good. The current rule of thumb is you don't want to have any more than 5 of all your trees. You don't want to have more than 5% of any species, 10% of any genus, and 10% of any family. So you look there and scroll down to the chart. That's a little easier view.
I have a question before the chart.
Yep.
What is the difference between a London plane tree and an American sycamore?
Oh, thank you for asking for that. So
I have wondered that myself, honestly.
the easiest way to tell the difference is the number of little gumballs that it has hanging from it. One of them has 1, the other has multiple, and I forget which one is which. I've got it written down so I don't have to remember.
Oh,
But the fun story with the London plane tree is back in the day when there were well-to-do gentlemen with estates in England, they sent folks to get different trees from around the world and planted them out in their garden. This fellow happened to have an American sycamore that he got and an Asian plane tree next to each other. And one night, the music got turned on, the candles were, and they
They were
made
playing
a
Isaac
new tree,
Hayes.
the London plane tree. So it's not a native tree to anywhere, but it's half American sycamore.
Oh,
Larry
very interesting.
Lawrence does not consider it as a native tree because it doesn't interact the same way as American sycamore. But they are a very hardy tree. They grew up in London during the Industrial Revolution, and they were okay with all the soot and the stuff. They're like, fine, we're good. And speaking with the folks in Ann Arbor who have more trees than us, I asked them, what's your most bulletproof tree? And they said the London plane tree. So we're planting more of those out and around. They do look very similar to the sycamore, though. It's a very subtle difference.
okay.
But thank you for giving that opportunity to share on that fun fellow
Yeah,
there.
it involves Isaac Hayes music. It's
Yes, yes. So as you see, we're actually doing pretty good. That little green line running up and down is the 5%. So we only really have a couple of species that are above that threshold. The red maple, that makes sense because everyone loves maple trees and they do really well in our soils. Crabapple, we've got a bunch of them planted all over the place, even though we haven't planted any this spring or last spring. Little leaf linden, they're nice and bushy. They're real happy trees out there. And then the Norway maple, we planted a bunch of those too after the ash trees, but they're going to go away because they're considered invasive now. That's going to be one of our next trees.
Is that what the asterisk means?
What's that?
Is that what the asterisk means? Asterisk?
Yes.
Okay.
It's that we talk about it somewhere else in the report
I
as a
thought so. Thank
problem
you.
tree. But when Patrick scrolls down, our big lead there, that's what we used to have for pears. And we're down under the 2.9% of all our trees, and it's gonna drop even farther. At the end of the spring, the only ones are gonna be out in the parks. It's still a priority to get rid of those, but there's less fear that if they collapse, that they're not gonna block a road or a sidewalk or injure anybody. But we're gonna be working on that. All right. And the nice thing already is that using this chart, it helped shape some of our tree selections for this planting season. We have a bunch of those. We're gonna try to stay away from those for a couple of seasons. Some species of concern, again, just some background stuff for you guys. We mentioned the Callery pear in the Norway maple. We are maybe a couple years away from starting to remove Norway maples more aggressively. For the next couple of years, if we get to a Norway maple that's been injured or needs trimming, instead of trimming it, we're probably gonna remove it and replace it. But more aggressive isn't gonna happen for a couple of years until we've refinished all of the planting spots. Blue spruce, they're a very beautiful tree. The challenge is they come from a drier, colder area up in the mountains of Colorado, and Michigan is wetter and warmer. And so the pests coming from them have all ganged up together, and they just call it now blue spruce blight. So there's a fungus and a bug and a virus that's coming after it. The smart tree folks say we probably have 5 to 15 years left of blue spruce in Michigan, at least down in our area, before you're gonna basically have to treat them every year to keep them alive. So that's gonna be an area of concern going forward, especially in the parks. They have a lot of those trees. Already when folks come in with site plans, we're telling them don't put those. Or if they're redoing their site plan and they have a couple of those, we say now is probably a good time to remove those and plant something else, so you don't have to replant this in a couple of years. Then the other ones on those other pages there, the Japanese lilac, Chinese elm, Siberian elm, tree of heaven, those are invasive or invasive potential. So we're not necessarily removing them now, but we're not planting them, and we're discouraging further planting of them. Our tree of heaven or paradise is going to be gone, at least the one that we're responsible for this spring. It's already cut to the ground. And it's a tricky fellow. They can't grind it up because every little bit of the root grows into a new tree, so we are gonna have to apply the Roundup on top of the stumps to get it in there to stop it from coming back. Going to refresh quickly. I know Lauren spoke about this, the native, non-native invasive difference. So native trees are trees that grew up here in the environment. At the time of settlement, the most prominent trees were the beech, the sugar maple, birch, and red oak. Birch isn't really good for a street tree, so we don't plant a bunch of those on the streets. There are some spots on Morton Taylor, we do have them. We have planted them out in parks, including with the grant last year. Beech tree, again, we planted some of those in the parks, but they're not really good for a street tree because they get really big. They want a lot of space, and they do have the health concerns. Sugar maple, again, we have a bunch of maple trees, so we're trying to not plant a bunch of those, but that's where the black maple comes in. And unfortunately, red oak is really susceptible to oak wilt. It basically, a fungus that gets in the tree and it acts like cholesterol and stops it from moving stuff up and down the tree. With the red oaks, it can kill them within a couple of weeks. And if you have oak trees next to each other and one gets it and their roots are touching, it'll get the other one and the other one and the other one down. The white oaks are less susceptible, so we're planting almost no red family oaks, instead focusing on white oaks and trying to keep it in areas where there aren't oaks already. And also, one of the things we do is good hygiene is we don't trim oak trees during fungus season. So basically April until October, we don't touch them unless there's a big storm or something, because that's when the fungus will fly around and get in the air. So native trees are great because they're generally robust here. The challenge we have is that we have a different environment than what was here. Now, one real good thing for native trees is they support a lot more trees and bugs and critters than non-native trees. So like the American sycamore tree, that will be used by up to 140 different species of bugs and caterpillars and critters, whereas the American sycamore or the London plane tree is 10 to 20, right? So there is a big difference. However, part of the math that goes in is if we have the London plane tree, which will survive and will be very bulletproof, supporting 10 very well is better than not supporting 140 because the tree keeps dying because it's different conditions than what grew up here. The non-native trees, that's the other area that we're planting in besides from native. Those are trees that aren't from here, but they work in these conditions and they're not aggressive. They don't spread a lot. Then we have the invasive potential, and the invasive potential is a new category they've started to use where it's not necessarily declared as invasive, but there are characteristics like it creates a lot of seeds or it grows really fast or outcompetes. And this list changes almost every year. So some of the trees I planted in 2023, the Japanese ivory silk, they're okay to plant in 2023. Winter 2024, so end of that year, it came back that these things are kind of spreading in an invasive manner in Pennsylvania. Let's stop doing it. So we're paying attention. It's requires a lot of eyes a lot of times. Any questions on the native, non-native, invasive? I know there's a lot of love for native trees nowadays. We do try to plant as many of them as we can, but there are some cases where we can't. And we want to make sure we have the diversity, so if the bug comes from southern Ohio that destroys all the maple trees, we still have trees and shade and the benefits of it. All right. Real briefly then onto the tree health, I am happy to report that our public trees are healthier than they've ever been. From 2019, there were only like 62 trees that were considered healthy. This past year, we had 84% of the trees that were considered healthy. Back in 2019, 6% of the trees were dead, so standing dead wood ready to fall down or drop limbs. Now it's 0.1%. And that 0.1%, it's gone by the end of the season. It can be tricky if they die over winter. We may not know it and catch it, so it may be later on in the year. But these are really good and really exciting. One of the things that isn't discussed a lot in urban forestry is the liability side of it. So maybe even this last year, the Howell Nature Center, there's a tree that split and fell on a kid and killed him. So it is a safety issue, and we're working on tracking, making sure that we're checking these trees on a more regular basis, so if they do get health, we can get it removed and get something better in there more quickly. So that is... Well, and partly the improvement of health is because we got rid of the pear trees that just split and they're not healthy and they never grow back right. For funding and resources, I'm jumping ahead here. So last year we invested more than $260,000 in public trees. That doesn't include staff time. So my time working on it, or Public Works or Leisure Services working on it, that mostly comes from the tree fund. There's $200,000. We had $100,000 for planting, $100,000 for removing and trimming and doing maintenance work. The balance of it came from grants and Leisure Services, and the Township Board approved money for replanting some on Summit Parkway. We did get the several grants that I mentioned. The tough thing is that although it's been great to use the tree fund for the bulk of our public tree work, it's a non-sustainable fund. And in that, I mean, it's funded when a developer has to cut down a protected tree and they can't replant it. We're running out of those areas with all the trees for the development. So we have, starting last summer, been working with administration on finding ways to to keep that going into the future.
So can I ask a question kind of related to that? And maybe this question goes to Patrick more than you, Zach. You know, when we're looking at PDDs and all that sort of thing, I know the question often comes up about what's a public benefit, and we end up talking about sidewalks and different things that a developer can add to the community. Because public benefit can be such a large term, is there any thought given to that public benefit going into, I don't want to use the term general fund. I don't want to call it, because I wouldn't want any monies to go into a fund that can be used for anything in the township. But is there any thought about putting into a trust fund or an endowment or something that money would just be used for replenishing the tree fund, or doing sidewalks in the township, or streets, or, you know, things, whatever is needed in the township as far as when we get into this whole discussion about public benefit? Because like in the last meeting, we had a couple residents who were griping about the senior development on Ford Road, and the so-called public benefit they were providing was, okay, they're gonna put sidewalk in front of empty property. I get it, we want to close the sidewalk holes in the township, but is that an immediate thing? So if you have them just put monies into an account that we can use that is maybe in a more immediate need, like replenishing the tree fund or whatever the case may be, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it could be, and with the tree ordinance that the Planning Commission's been reviewing, and this first several pages of it has all the benefits that trees provide, and those are also included in the annual tree report, and something that our current ordinance had been falling short on, just not documenting the importance of trees. And I think that in putting that in the tree report and in the ordinance, it kind of sets a marker down in terms of, if we were to have the definite benefit for PDDs be for contributions to the tree fund, we could directly relate that to those findings of why trees are important. They're important not just to the site itself, but to the overall community, and they provide a lot of benefits. If there was a PDD where a developer wanted to make a contribution or allow for, you know, or just to plant trees themselves and use their landscaper to plant them in parks and other places, that could be facilitated. And if they contribute to the tree fund, currently the contributions that have been put in the tree fund have only been used for trees. So that is a question that we were easily able to answer in terms of, when we collect money for someone cuts down trees and they pay in lieu of replanting, that money is dedicated to the tree program. It doesn't go to general fund for any non-tree purposes. So that's something that we would continue to do in terms of whether someone pays in lieu of planting trees, or as part of a definite benefit, they make a contribution to the tree fund for other planting. So we could use that as a definite benefit. In terms of how to quantify it, you know, I'd have to work on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's difficult to do, but I'm sure smart people like you can figure it out, Patrick.
Yeah, and there are many.
So speaking of which, next is tree benefits. So I'm going to start this by saying that these were calculated using iTree Eco, which is a software program developed by the U.S. Forest Service and a couple of other industry groups, and it is based on environmental readings taken at Will Run Airport. So it's really close to us. There are some easily quantifiable. So we put in all of our species, the health, the size of the trees, and it put out all this information. So air quality, 1.4 tons of fine particulate matter was absorbed. And I think I wrote in here that doesn't sound like a lot, but most of these are things that are measured parts per million or parts per billion. So that's a substantial impact. Now, this is the $13,000 per year. That's just calculated on if you paid someone to remove the pollutants from the air. It's not counting if you don't get asthma or you don't get sick or your health is better, you don't have to miss work, you don't have to go to the hospital. So those are kind of add-on benefits that are tough to calculate but are really important at the community level. The other neat thing, over 100 tons of oxygen these fellows created. And the neat thing too with the trees is that these benefits get bigger. every year they get bigger. They don't diminish. Stormwater was a tremendous impact as well. So the reduced stormwater runoff, that 700,000 gallons, that's water that fell from the heavens that did not end up flowing out of Canton Township because they were sucked up by a tree somehow. That's a lot, especially with our clay soils. The other one, the intercepted gallons, the more than 3 million gallons, that's water that hits the tree and doesn't get right into the stormwater system. So it gets stuck in the leaves, and then an hour after the rain, you walk out there and it sprinkles down on your head when the wind blows. That is also important because it reduces the peak flow through the system. So you don't have to buy the really massive pipes. You can have smaller pipes and you don't notice it as much. So very tremendous impacts. And one of the things that we have tried to prioritize these past couple of years with planting is in areas where we're not encumbered by power lines, trying to put the trees with the biggest canopy that we can there. That makes sense for the area because it's going to have the bigger impact, especially if it's over a hard surface like the road. Carbon sequestration and storage. Again, 38 tons were sequestered last year. So that's carbon that our trees took out of the ground or took out of the air that they locked up in their fibers. And the 1,000 tons, that's combined what they've got right now in them, which isn't insubstantial. It's kind of impressive. Some other things, evapotranspiration. This might be the first time I ever had to pronounce that in a public setting.
You did great.
Thank you. I've been practicing all afternoon. 16 million gallons potential that they can release. So when it gets really hot and dry, they naturally release the moisture. So it has a cooling effect on the air. It can even start rain in certain circumstances. And it just makes it a better environment in those bad times when the air isn't being nice to you. Then we have a bunch of benefits here that are tricky to quantify. There are some areas where there may be some metrics. We're trying to find things that we can track from year to year. It's a bit tricky. The health one, that's why I'm very excited this year. We're planting 40 trees in front of public schools. We got a grant that partially funds that. There are studies that show that kids that go to schools with a bunch of trees around them do better. They do better academically, they have less stress, they have better health outcomes, all those types of things. So this is, again, difficult to quantify, but everyone benefits from it. Urban heat, again, is huge. It's difficult to measure that, and it takes a long time to measure it because the canopy doesn't grow quickly, but especially in our areas where we have a lot of hard surfaces of the roads and parking lots, it's tremendous. And then the one other thing I'm going to highlight is the property values and economic activity. That's huge. The studies have different numbers based on the area, but properties go up 3 to 15% in value or rental if it's well-treed versus not well-treed. And then people in areas with lots of trees, again, studies show between 9 and 12% more money spent in those areas versus untreed areas. So it's not just the happy, huggy stuff. This is solid, beneficial stuff that we have out there. Now, the back part here, other tree activities are kind of little duck paddling underneath the surface things that we've been doing that aren't really visible. So after the tornado, we looked around and we saw, oh, there are a bunch of trees missing, and not just where the tornado hit, throughout. So Canton, starting in 1969, basically said, if you're doing a residential development, you need to put some street trees in front of those houses. It's been pretty much intact since that time. The math and the species have changed a little bit, but we started sending out letters to the homeowners association saying, hey, you guys, start talking with your residents. If they're missing trees, start letting them know that they're going to have to start planting those back again. Now, farther down where it says contractor support, our planting contract from last year and our tree maintenance contract from this year, we had language in there that said, we want you to work with our homeowners, with our property owners, to help them get trees taken care of and nice and happy. And so if you are a homeowners association and you get enough folks together, you want to plant 25 trees, you can go to our contractor and you get the same rate that we do, which is a really good rate. It's a really good rate to have these trees put in the ground at this size. And starting this year, it's the same deal for tree maintenance, whether it's pruning or removing or grinding or all
Oh,
three.
that's awesome.
Probably don't need all three, 2 at max. But again, that's a very exciting thing. It significantly reduces the cost. I am happy to say that Fox Run on Beck, just north of Ford, was our first to complete a tree planting project through that. I think they put in about 30 trees. It is very nice to see. If you're ever in that area, just give a little drive through the neighborhood. It looks brilliant. Let's see.
I know my neighborhood was pushing that last year to see if we could get 25, but it was, like you said, too little too late, but
Yep, and we're working on finding ways to maybe bump it down if it's at the same time that we're doing our planting. If it's less, then they still kind of get the mobilization benefit.
Is that the contractors that are listed in the front of that report that are
Yes.
participating in that?
Yep. We've also spent a lot of time updating our inventory, and again, that's not sexy, but that's gonna make it work a lot better. So for example, we didn't have the addresses, the adjacent addresses for our trees, which made it difficult for our contractors to call in the MISTIG.
well, plus you can't send mail to your trees then. I mean,
Exactly, and so we had, bless them, the interns that are on there, they went through and they added the adjacent addresses for every single tree in there, so it's a lot easier in the future. We'll be able to send mailings. We weren't this year, but when we do work in the future, we can say, we're gonna be doing work on your tree this year.
Good.
Be ready, they're gonna come out there. Our work plan for this year, we are already in the midst of tree activities. You may have seen there are trees missing out there. There are 178 trees that we're going to be planting for spring, including 41 in empty spots, and also 40 at the schools. So we're on the plus side. We're putting more trees in this year. We're putting 80 more trees in than we're removing for the spring. We are trimming 73 trees, which is a lot for spring. Eventually, we do need to ramp up to about 1,000 trees per year that we're trimming to keep on that 7-year cycle so they don't get major structural issues, and so that they'll be healthy and happy for longer times. So that's very exciting that the trees are out there right now. We anticipate they're going to be going in the ground next week. They have all arrived out at Ford Road. They're sitting there getting their water, and they're going to be in the ground here soon. The work plan for this year, in addition to the actual stuff, is the Township Board has said, yes, we want to be a Tree City USA recognized community. There's going to be a tree planting event with the Township Board out by the pavilions that were knocked down by the tornado. That's one of the requirements. We are working on a public tree care ordinance. There are a lot of nice samples on there. Our next step is going to be having discussions with the Township Board about the policy directions they want that to be shaped as. Our budget is right where it's supposed to be. You have to spend $2 per person, so for us, it's just under $200,000. And one of the discussions is going to be whether it's a board or department, or not necessarily a department, but an individual. So like Tree City USA wants to know who is the entity responsible for the trees so that there's no buck passing around. That's a discussion we're going to have with those folks. Some other exciting things is stewardship plans. So as I mentioned, we have a bunch of those kind of wild areas that were left over from development or that we've got because they're in a floodplain. We don't really manage those with the trees right now. They could have a bunch of buckthorn, a bunch of wild pears out there. Stewardship plan is we go out there and we figure out what's going on and how do we manage this? Do we just look for the big trees? Do we look for the cottonwoods that's going to sway and fall into someone's bedroom at night? We do have an approved vendor from when we did the large bid, folks who can do that. An urban forestry master plan is kind of like the master plan, but for trees. There are a lot of places that have done that, and the best description of that is we've had, over the past 20 years, we've had 20 one-year plans. And so it can be difficult to challenge and get the best for the investment. Forestry master plan is one 20-year plan that you plug in and pull from the individual years. Some other things is we continue to get questions about the tree planting match program that Canton used to have that died in the Great Recession. Thursday, I got an email from someone, does the township still have this? Our neighbors did it when they planted their trees a couple years ago.
A couple years ago.
If you live in the place long enough,
I
20 years can be a
remember it.
couple years ago. So we keep getting questions of that. Our current work with the HOA and our contractors, almost like that. It's a bit trickier, but it was our first step. So this is going to be as we start to talk about funding potentials to see the scope of what we can do in the future. And that's the quick version of what we're doing with trees. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any ideas on how to make this better, let us know. One of the things we're excited about is adding tracking from year to year. It was tough to go from 2019 to 2024 because things weren't tracked the same. Like even the number of trees were just different because of how we counted them to juice our numbers, basically. So any suggestions, let us know. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions for you. We are planting different varieties of trees.
Yes?
That's pretty good stuff. But what are we doing for public awareness? Because I think the trees which we manage, 7,000 odd trees, there are probably thousands in Canton, right, managed by homeowners or other entities. So what are we doing for public awareness where we are able to tell them that these are the good trees, this is where you should concentrate?
Yep.
Couple more questions. Grants we were talking about. So what kind of damage does DTE Energy does to our trees when they start trimming those trees? And are we approaching them for grants? Because I'm pretty sure they do a lot of grants. So they come and damage the trees, but they should also give us some grants to put those trees back. Another one I had was just a general idea, like we have 7,000 trees which we manage. How many trees in total do we have in Canton? And are we going down in total number of trees overall? I know as we are managing more trees, but as a community, are we going down or are we going up?
That would be a great question to incorporate in our urban forestry master plan that we hope to start working on here. My gut is we are going down, but not as substantially as we had in past decades because the large forested areas have been hit. Our decreases now are primarily from, I would say, from street trees that are being removed and not replaced. To the other questions, for variety, a couple things that we're doing. So this is one of the steps. That's why we spend all that time talking about the importance of variety and the different species and species to avoid. Another example is when Fox Run came in and we started that engagement, they said, we want maple trees. They have a lot of red maple out there, which is great for the soil. And I said, I know, I love maple trees. I grew up in a town that has a maple syrup festival. It's this weekend if you want maple syrup up in Shepherd, Michigan. I love them. I transplanted a maple tree when I was 4 years old, but you have to have some other type of trees in there. And I walked with them through that of the importance of that variety and was able to get at what they wanted that would be okay besides maple. So in their case, they wanted to have trees that kind of had the same shape, you know, that aesthetic concern. And also they wanted trees that had really bright red foliage in winter. So that's kind of a very one-off bespoke thing. Another thing that we have done is we've started, it's very baby phase now, but a tree page under the planning division where we talk about some of these things. Ms. Hamilton, who runs a lot of the social media, gets a lot of questions and she's posted them to me, so we've put an FAQ out there. We're also working on more outreach to the homeowners association. It's not going to reach everyone in the community, but it's really quick if you can get to one person and that spreads it to 100, right? So we're working with them not just on replacing trees, but better tree management. So as part of our discussion for planting is, here are trees that do well in Canton, and please don't try to plant a bunch of one type. Another area of concern we're working at with the HOAs is volcano mulch. And I'm sad to say that we have volcano mulch outside of our building now. So if you see a tree that has mulch up to the trunk, that's wrong, pull it back, you should be able to see the dirt around it. And that's a great way to kill trees young and not get all the benefits. We actually have pictures of trees that fell over because they rotted at the base, because the mulch keeps moisture and the trunk isn't used to having all that moisture against it. For DTE, I have reached out to their local government contact person so we can try to coordinate that. So one area, for example, is if they're trimming a bunch of Norway maple trees underneath power lines, what are we doing? We're gonna cut those trees anyways. Let's figure out a way we can just cut them down, save you money, save us money, and we can plant a new tree underneath there. The thing that we've been very deliberate about starting in 2023 is right tree, right place. So the trees underneath power lines shouldn't reach into the 10-foot magic zone of those trees. We still have legacy areas, and you can have large trees near power lines. Well, I grew up in Shepherd, and we had 150-year-old maple trees that were coexisting, but it's tough to get there. And if we cannot have any conflicts at all, that's best for everybody. So that is in its very beginning phases. She had to go out of town, but we're trying to work to getting to that point. And the trees that were planted in front of the schools were funded in part by a DTE energy grant that we got from the state.
I personally believe that our social media outreach is not even close to other communities around us. And I've personally seen that, Canton, Novi, Farmington. If you go to their social media outreach, which now it's very popular, everybody is opening, whether Instagram or Facebook or whatever. If you compare Canton's outreach, it's not even close to other communities around us. So I think we should do some better job in reaching out to communities with small stuff like what you just told, that you don't need to see the dirt around at the base of the trunk. I never knew this. All my trees in my backyard mulch all the way up. I'll make sure it's out now, but those are small little posts, right? To
Huge.
do
Yep.
awareness.
Yeah.
Yep, and we are starting to do that. I would say in the past, a lot of the tree program was just kind of buckling down and doing the stuff and not necessarily celebrating and sharing that. And I think those are very important to spread the knowledge and why it's good and why it's important and what you can do yourself. So we have started to share some social media. It's definitely not a lot. Like before the trees started coming down this spring, Ms. Hamilton put on Facebook and reassured folks that the trees are coming down, but we're putting new trees back. How many comments or likes or hearts did we get on that one?
I think it was well over 200.
So, yep, when we are engaging, it's being well received. We're going to work on being more proactive and finding more ways to mix it in. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Zach, this is impressive. It's really quite an effort. I really appreciate the hard work that you put into this. I did notice one little typo. It's a ginkgo biloba, not ginkgo bilbao.
Yes.
Bilbao. But it's probably autocorrect.
I'm just happy if I get the second G in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, ginkgo. Ooh, yeah, that's hard
It doesn't,
to spell.
the fingers don't want to put it in there. It doesn't feel right.
No, but yeah, this is impressive.
353 comments for our tree program announcement in the spring.
Yeah, 112 comments and 353 likes or hearts or reactions.
Awesome.
But I'll say, the folks in Canton really do love their trees. For example, in 2023, when we did some outreach about we're going to be removing some of the pear trees again, I got maybe a dozen folks calling in, which doesn't sound that big, but to take the effort to call in, they were asking, what trees are you putting instead? It's not going to smell awful. And that was a really fantastic thing. No one has ever brought discussion of what do the trees smell like. along the streets. Someone said, when I drive up Canton Center in the spring, I have to roll up my windows and I turn it to the internal circulation because I can't stand those trees.
Yeah.
So folks are tuned in and they're interested and they care, so that is a great issue to have.
Yeah, I hope we can get more outreach to the homeowners associations and support for those tree replacements and also the, like, for example, I know I live in Glengarry across the street, and the original part, the phase 1, they have a lot, well, phase 1 and 2 at least, there are a lot of pear trees on the median in the boulevard, and then some of the homeowners have pear trees, and they look terrible. I mean, they really do. It would be nice if they had some funding to, some help to replace those, because every time there's a windstorm, a branch comes down, or,
Yep. Well, and I remember talking with your HOA president last year. The price to replant is great. Folks are like, yeah,
Right.
take my money, plant those trees. But then when they figured out how much it cost to remove those trees,
yeah.
it became unattainable. So that's why we were super excited this year that the removal became a lot cheaper if you can get a posse together.
Yeah, and I think, having that on an ongoing basis will be helpful too, because all the HOAs are budgeting in the fall, and if they know what the expense is gonna be, then they can budget for it and raise their dues as needed, or find the money somewhere, as needed, so this is wonderful.
Another question, you said the contractors will match or give the same discount if 25 or more trees are ordered. So is that in a small little particular area or anywhere in Canton?
So
HOA.
it's not specifically defined in our contract and bid by design. The idea, though, is that it's kind of compact, so they get mobilization benefits. So if it's 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, it doesn't pencil out for them. But one of the things we had explored is there are a couple different HOAs for Glengarry, right?
There's what, 4?
Yeah, there are a lot of Glengarrians out there.
Yeah.
But something like that, if all the Glengarries combined and put in one, but for their tree order, if they combined, that's something that would work.
So the trees in front of the home, is that, because in our subdivision, I live in Central Park, that's our responsibility. The subdivision is not putting those trees right in front of the home.
It depends. So by default, and Patrick, correct me if I'm fumbling some of the details here, by default, our subdivision ordinance says it's the adjacent property owner in site condos and subdivisions. There are some cases where that area, especially if there are private streets, is defined as a general common element. And in those cases, it can pull in the trees as an HOA responsibility, but it's a really detailed thing. It's most common for it to be adjacent property owners. Now, that could be part of the discussion too we have when new folks come in is, as much as it's tough to get into entanglements in the US, if you have an HOA that's managing all the street trees, those trees are probably going to be managed better because you're going to have more resources, you can do more regular maintenance as opposed to when my tree dies, all of a sudden I have to come up with all this money to do this stuff. So that is a discussion that we can have similar to stormwater pond maintenance, is that this is an infrastructure element, how is it going to be taken care of?
Yeah, for example, I know in my HOA, the president was emailing and asking people, if you want to participate, there's this great price available. And we just need to make sure we have 25, homeowners or 25 trees. So they were trying to coordinate it in my sub, but we just didn't.
All right, well, thank you.
Anybody else have any comments?
Right. Thank you. If you have any other questions tree-related, let me know. This is very exciting. Kudos to Ms. Hamilton for the beautiful artwork in it as well. It really makes it pop. Again, between now and the end of the year, if you have any thoughts of things to include in this to help better tell the story and better educate, let us know.
Thank you.
you have
Sorry,
done a
no, Madam
wonderful
Chair. I'm
job
sorry. Go ahead.
compiling that, actually. It's pretty
Very
good.
good job.
It'll be a lot better if we can share now all this work in general with the community, so just piece by piece.
No, I was going to say through the chair, I have 9 Bradford pear trees in my yard, and I'm very sad right now. So
Oh, now you have some partridges too, I hope. No, no partridges?
no partridges.
Can I say, you did a great job? Say that, Pope, you did a great job.
Can't say that.
I can't? No. Oh,
Yeah, you
okay.
can.
I'm kidding.
Come
I
on.
know, I know that, but he did a great job.
He
Did. No, this
You're
is awesome.
almost as good at, and they wouldn't say it, as the guy, what's his name?
Lawrence,
Almost as good at Lawrence.
Enthusiasm for trees is very fun.
it is.
It is.
I love
It's an
trees.
easy thing to be enthusiastic about, I think.
It is. It is. They add so much. And I mean, honestly, the reason I live where I live is because we were driving around one day and I said, oh, pull in here. They have some really nice trees in this subdivision. That's why I live there. So, yeah. All right, well, motion to adjourn, anyone?
So moved.
Motion.
Support.
Okay, I would give that one to Commissioner Lee, made the motion, and the support was Commissioner Weber. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you.
Zach,